Okay, welcome to my lectures on how to read a book. I hope that you're enjoying the book, and I do hope that these lectures kind of help you to summarize the material. And that's all that these lectures are, is a summary. So let me give you an introduction to Adler and why we're doing this, why I'm giving the lectures, what their function is. So why should you read this book? And who is the book for? What is it about? Well, you should read it if you want to develop skills in reading. All right? So being able to read a sentence is one thing. Being able to understand a sentence or a chapter or a paragraph or a book, and being able to understand it and to see how it's applicable for your life is another thing. And this book really will help you become a much better reader. Anyone, no matter how skilled they are at reading, can learn to read better. And I think that even for the most skilled reader, this book will be beneficial. So the main purpose is for those who are interested in reading books in order to increase their understanding. Okay, you'll see that there's a distinction between reading for information and reading for understanding, and we'll get into that. Why did I choose a book on reading a book, on how to read a book, for a class on critical thinking? Well, learning to read well is going to enable you to become a better thinker and a lifelong learner. So if you want to become a lifelong learner and yet you struggle to read and consistently struggle to read, well then a large chunk of the available information out there for you will be rather inaccessible to you. Sure, you can learn from analyzing a leaf, walking out in the world and being observant, but there's a whole world of information unavailable to you if you struggle to read. And so this is going to open up all of that information to you by helping you to read, digest, and understand books. Or, it doesn't just need to be books. It could be news articles, blog posts, whatever the case may be. How's it going to help you become a better thinker? Well, in books, you have sustained thought and argumentation. If you can read a book that is a sustained argument and be able to summarize what that argument is, you're going to be learning from, well, depending on what book you read, but learning from the best on how to argue, how to think, how to analyze information. And so if books are open to you, really that can help you form your mind. What is the purpose of the lectures? Why am I lecturing? Why don't you just read the book? Why am I giving you the lectures? Well, I want to give you a summary of each chapter and section of the book, each chapter and each section of the chapter, in order to kind of help you navigate the book in case reading really is a struggle for you. Okay, so an important note, though, is that these lectures cannot take the place, and they should not take the place, of actually reading the book. And if you look at the homework assignment for this section, you'll see that these lectures cannot take the place of reading the book. You're going to have to do a lot of work for yourself in order to do those homework assignments well. Okay, chapter 1 of how to read a book. It's called The Activity and Art of Reading. So here's an outline of the lecture, and the outline is really just based on an outline of the book. It's set various sections in the book. There's active reading, the various goals of reading, reading as learning, and then present and absent teachers. Active reading. All reading is to some degree active. All reading is to some degree active. You need to be using your mind, you're using your eyes, you're using your hands, your fingers. You're using your body. You're sitting or you're standing, you're walking around. Whatever you're doing when you're reading, it's active. And reading can be more or less active. Some people, and I don't recommend this unless you have trouble falling asleep, some people read while they're in their bed with the lights dimmed, and their teeth brushed, their pajamas on. Basically, give them 10 minutes and they're going to be asleep. Now, I know I'm not trying to judge you if you do read in bed. Sometimes that's the only time a person can read, is when everyone else is in bed. I would recommend, though, if that's the only time you can read, is to not read in your bed. That sends some mixed messages to your brain, to your body. You want to keep the bed for sleeping and maybe other, maybe more active activities, adult activities. And then reading or studying, you want to keep that to a different area in your house. So that your mind will be engaged. It knows that now is the time to read. So reading can be more or less active, like I said. Your eyes move. Your highlighter highlights. That's more active than just reading. Your hand might sweep across the page to give you an idea of where you're at on the page and what your pace is. The reader will outline, notate, and summarize the book. Reading should be very active, actually. The more active, the better. The more active, the better. So take reading in bed, which is basically just a way to fall asleep, versus reading with pen in hand, writing notes, underlining, things like that. So Adler says, one person reads something better than another first, by reading it more actively, and second, by performing each of the acts involved in reading more skillfully. Active and skillful reading. That's the key to reading well. What are the goals of reading? They're various, but Adler, he identifies three: reading for information, reading for understanding, and reading for entertainment. And as you saw on one of the first slides, reading for understanding is the aim of Adler's book. So what is reading for information? This just increases our store of information, but it doesn't help necessarily in our understanding. So you would read for information if you were reading, say, a newspaper, where the book isn't taking you to new heights as a thinker, new heights as a reasoner. The newspaper isn't taking you to new heights. It's really just conveying information to you. When did this happen? What happened? Why did it happen? Maybe not why it happened. How did it happen? Right? Magazines are similar. Although you have some more challenging magazines, like, say, the Wall Street Journal, say, the New York Times Magazine. But a lot of this sort of reading is just to gain information rather than to increase understanding, although you can read something like this to increase understanding. Reading for understanding. This is the sort of reading in which a person tries to read something that at first he does not completely understand. The thing read is initially higher or better than the reader. And please don't be put off or offended by thinking that the book that you're reading, the author of the book that you're reading, is better than you. Well, the author of the book had better be better than you, or what are you doing reading the book? In reading, you're trying to raise yourself up, and you can't raise yourself up if you're reading someone who's at your level or lower. You need to find people, authors, who are higher than you, and I'm only talking in certain aspects, like maybe you're more intelligent than them, but they know more about a certain topic, so they would be better than you at that topic, and so you would be trying to reach their level by reading their material. So such reading, when you choose a work that's higher than you, it takes you from a state of understanding less to a state of understanding more. And then you, because of it, become better. So examples would be reading like a book on auto mechanics for someone who doesn't know much about cars, or physics or philosophy or literature. And again, it's in order to gain understanding rather than pure information. That's reading for understanding. Reading for entertainment is just reading for pleasure. Examples would be reading Harry Potter for fun. Now, you're not necessarily trying to increase in understanding, not trying to gain information about the world necessarily, but reading for fun is just reading for enjoyment or pleasure, or reading for entertainment is reading for enjoyment or pleasure. But please note that any book that can be read for understanding or information can, theoretically, be read for entertainment as well. So those are the goals of reading. Now we need to view reading as learning. Reading as learning, this is the distinction Adler makes between learning by instruction and learning by discovery. So the difference is simply this. Learning by instruction is the art of being taught, while learning by discovery is what he calls unaided learning. And he also makes a distinction, he said it can be between aided and unaided discovery. So learning by instruction is aided discovery, learning by discovery is unaided discovery, because they're both discovery. One is just aided, the other is unaided. So an example of learning by instruction or aided discovery is reading or listening. So when you listen to a lecture like this one, that's aided discovery. You're discovering things about the world through a teacher. Reading, you're discovering things about the world through a teacher. An example of learning by discovery would be investigating nature or the world on one's own, so like observing a leaf or considering a concept. The concept of a horse, you're mulling it over in your brain, or you're out looking at a leaf, you're seeing all the veins and such in it, the color, the lighting on the leaf, whatever. So when you're reading a book, you're discovering through a teacher. It's aided discovery or aided learning. It's the art of being taught. Now, when you have a book and not a real person, we would say that you have an absent teacher. So there are teachers that can be present or they can be absent. So a present teacher would be face-to-face conversation, or even on the phone. It doesn't have to be in person, through email or whatever. An absent teacher would be through reading a book. Now when you're in school, even if you're learning online, you're learning through a present teacher. And that's good because you can ask the teacher if you don't understand something. And I encourage you to ask me if there's something you don't understand. So there's a con of learning from an absent teacher. If there's something you don't understand, you got to answer it yourself. You can't just ask the teacher. So for those of us who finish school and want to continue learning, we're dependent on reading books. Of course, we can always go out into the world. We can look at leaves. We can study chemicals or whatever. We can engage our mind by thinking about a concept. But there's this whole world of information and wisdom and such that it's only in books. And if you want to be a lifelong learner, if you want to continue learning after school, you've got to learn to read well. Okay, so that's chapter 1. And I hope that was a good summary of chapter 1 for you. And I'll see you for chapter 2.